there, fellow sojourners, and welcome back to another edition of Appropriate in the Culture. On today's episode, we discuss the fallout from naming the latest Star Wars director. I'm Pastor Shane, I'll be your Sith Lord today as we appropriate some culture. So we are back from Christmas and New Year's break, and what better way to kick things off than by tackling the super important topic of Disney's choice of Star Wars directors. If you're unaware, and good for you, recently Disney announced their choice of director for an upcoming Star Wars film on Rey. Here's how that went.
So the first woman and the first person of color to direct a Star Wars film. It's set to be released in 2026. You can say that the force is strong with this one. Here's Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy.
You know, I'm very thrilled about the project because I think what we are about to create is something very special. And we're in 2024 now. And I think it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape the story in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, female. But some people aren't down with female empowerment, and they're getting a stern talking to from paid corporate shills like this.
I swear to God, men, reach down into your pants, find your and your and be okay with it. We can take a woman directing a film in Star Wars and live. We're all gonna survive. I swear to God, you guys want to come off like you're tough and you're a bunch of wusses. Finally, a woman gets to direct a theatrical feature in Star Wars with Rey, with other women leading the way. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Wow, a lot of profanity. And you kissed Disney's butt with that mouth? But yes, finally a female voice leading the Star Wars franchise. I mean, the whole Star Wars universe has been overseen and produced by Kathleen Kennedy for the past decade, but finally a female director. I mean, yes, there have been female directors on episodes of various Star Wars shows, but this is finally the first female director of a Star Wars feature film, except for Patty Jenkins. But that film got canceled or delayed. So finally, we have the first female director of a Star Wars feature film that won't get canceled or delayed. We think. Historic. Now, the truth is, the kerfuffle over the announced director has very little to do with the gender of the director, because when people heard that Patty Jenkins was tagged to direct a Star Wars film, nobody batted an eye. But when people heard the name Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, they immediately said, "Who?" Because Ms. Chinoy was a journalist turned filmmaker, and she's primarily known as a documentary filmmaker. Here she is in her own words describing her career.
At the heart of everything, I am a storyteller and an activist. And my body of work over the last 20 years has been guided by my activism, and every single piece of work that I've ever created has a piece of activism in it. It could be very overt or it could be covert, but it is there. And I think that as a storyteller, I'm not sure if all of you know this, but I'm not a trained filmmaker. So I never went to film school. I went to Smith College and did my undergraduate and studied economics and political science like a good Pakistani girl. And then I did my graduate studies, but also in international politics. And so I am an accidental filmmaker.
An activist and accidental filmmaker. And that has struck some people as perhaps as maybe an odd choice to helm one of the most beloved and expensive IPs. And digging deeper into Ms. Chinoy's filmmaking philosophy wasn't particularly encouraging. Here's one of her driving motives.
What is the balance of activating a force for change, but also trying to permeate that patriarchy, that power structure? And is that a part of the calculation of your art as well? And what's been the reaction to that?
Oh, absolutely. I like to make men uncomfortable. I enjoy making men uncomfortable. Not you, just not you. Not you.
Point taken, point taken.
But, it is important to be able to look into the eyes of a man and say, I am here, and recognize that. And recognize that I am working to bring something that makes you uncomfortable, and it should make you uncomfortable because you need to change your attitude. And it's only when you're uncomfortable, when you're shifty, when you have to have difficult conversations that you will perhaps look at yourself in the mirror and not like the reflection, and then say, maybe there is something wrong with the way I think, or maybe there is something wrong with the way I am addressing this issue.
Yes, what I liked best about Star Wars as a kid was how it made me deeply uncomfortable. I would watch Star Wars and it would force me to look at myself in the mirror and not like the reflection. Now, clearly, in context, she's talking about her documentary films, but the point still stands that it feels like an odd choice to put such a woman in charge of a franchise whose target audience is still primarily male, and she doesn't seem to like men very much. But apparently, the burden is on us to understand where she's coming from here. As a Twitter user put it, this is Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. She's the director for the new Star Wars movie. Many people on the right are urging folks to boycott her film because of recent comments she made about wanting her work to make men uncomfortable. Here's the deal. The woman has spent the majority of her career exposing human rights atrocities against women across the globe, especially in the Middle East. Most of us have never had to contend with the horror of the things she's seen, honor killings and child brides, and the brutal beatings of women who step out of line in a small way. Her film, Saving Face, features the stories of women who've been permanently disfigured through acid attacks, a startlingly frequent practice in her native Pakistan. If our eyes had seen half the things this woman has observed, I don't think we would be wringing our hands over comments about making men uncomfortable or pretending like American men are the true victims here. There are certain things that should make us all uncomfortable, and of course, the trauma she's endured is going to influence her work. Do I agree with her about everything? No. I probably would have chosen a different messaging strategy, but we can at least try to understand her perspective. No, we're under no obligation to understand her perspective. We're paying customers. Our decision is, do I want to pay money for this bit of entertainment or not? Now, perhaps through her skill and talent, she can delight and entertain and challenge her audience with her perspective. That's possible, though understandably doubtful for 3 reasons. 1, her perspective and analysis is juvenile. The problem is not the patriarchy, the problem is not men, half the world is men, but I dare say most men are not throwing acid in the face of girls who want to go to school. It's a particular kind of man. It stems from a particular kind of culture. What could it be? What could it be? I don't know. It's an unsolvable puzzle. Second of all, people doubt her because she has virtually no experience in Hollywood feature film direction. Again, she's a journalist turned documentary filmmaker. But that could be a great fit for Star Wars because apparently, Star Wars was shot like a documentary. Obaid-Chinoy has made some of the best-looking documentaries with the best shots, capturing moments as they happen, and great shots when they're expositional in nature. Star Wars was not shot like a documentary. But lastly, people doubt this director because they doubt Kathleen Kennedy, who has a proven track record of being terrible. Now, some of you will say, you can't criticize a film you haven't seen. True, but nobody has seen the film. Kathleen Kennedy hasn't seen the film. Sharmeen hasn't seen the film. Nobody has seen the film. The film doesn't exist. This is projection and extrapolation based on the higher, which is what Kathleen Kennedy is doing. She's using her experience and her faculty of reason to decide you should direct the next Star Wars film. And other people are using their experience and their faculty of reason and have decided, no, she shouldn't. That's a bad hire. Now, we don't have the insider information. We're not in the meetings. But I didn't need to sit in on the interviews to know that Adam Gase was a bad hire for the New York Jets. His track record was bad as the head coach of the Dolphins. They fired him. And then the Jets go, hey, you lost in our division for years. How about you come lose for us? And he did. He's now the offensive coordinator for a high school. I knew that was a bad hire because I have eyes. I have Gase's track record, and I have faculty of reason. Didn't need to see him lay out his vision. And the same thing is true here. Kathleen Kennedy's track record is terrible. She has demonstrated repeatedly that she is far more focused on girl boss vibes than telling a good or even competent story. And so it's a reasonable thing to notice when you hire a self-described activist, feminist, accidental filmmaker. But the film could still be good. Who knows? Stephen Knight is writing it, and maybe Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy will bring a fresh, interesting, engaging perspective and tell us a story that's thrilling and moving and wildly entertaining. And that's the sad part. And the important point for us who want to reach audiences that might be antagonistic to our worldview. You can't antagonize your audience in your pitch. Chinoy clearly wants to impart her worldview. She wants to do more than just entertain. So do we. That's the entire premise of what we're doing here. But when you lead with the worldview and not the entertainment, you alienate the audience. The storytelling always must come first. And what she pitched to the world was her gender, not the story. And speaking of stories, be sure to pick up my book, 6 Rounds for the Witching Hour, available now in paperback. The link to that is in the show notes. If you like what we're doing here and you want it to continue, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, follow me on the socials, join my author's Facebook page, and I'll see you next time for more Appropriating the Culture.